Hey everyone, my name is Payal and I'm a professor at IIM Kozhikode. So a little bit about me. I am a teacher, a researcher, a trainer, and author of this book, Mastering Behavior, Managing Self-Analysis. The book, Mastering Behavior, captures all the behavioral issues faced by managers, young or new. You see, we are like porcupines who always tend to huddle with other porcupines to share the warmth, especially during cold. But they end up hurting each other due to their sharp spines. The point here is that their intention is not bad, but by nature they're designed in a way that they end up being in conflicts. Humans are just like porcupines. Uh, we depend on each other. We cannot survive without each other. But because of our idiosyncrasies, as we call them as weaknesses, um, we end up getting into situations that lead to a lot of differences of opinions and conflicts. Workplaces, of course, are no different. Issues such as stress, anxiety, exhaustion, personality clashes, differences of opinions, different working style and working preferences, poor self-confidence, and so on, not just hampers your performance and overall success at work, but it also impacts your inner peace drastically. The book Mastering Behavior covers exactly those soft spots at work and offer a one-stop solution to first-time managers, people who have changed their jobs, managers who have been dealing with a lot of subordinates or young chaps. This book is also important for students who are just about to intern or who have just joined a new job. So if I have to summarize it, I would say that this book, Mastering Behavior, basically decodes your interpersonal issues at work like a buddy and offers solution like a mentor. And let me express my sincere gratitude to people who allowed me this opportunity to speak about my book. Thank you so much, you all. Have a great day ahead.
Good evening and welcome back to Studio 2. We now have reached our last discussion for the day. Our discussion today, the dynamics of relationship in fiction and non-fiction, will be with our guest, Anirban Bhattacharya. Anirban is the number one best-selling author of the true crime book The Deadly Dozen, India's most notorious serial killers. He is the co-creator, producer, and writer of the television show Savdhan India and is also the producer of Crime Patrol and Fear Flies. He has four books slated for release in 2022 and including a young adult fiction. Bevinda Collaço. Bevinda Collaço has been a journalist for more than 40 years. As magazine editor, she inherited an agony aunt page, which was not the write your own letters type page. The agony aunt situations formed the base for her first book, I'm Old, I'm Wise, and I Know My ST. The book was published by Amaryllis in 2021. Rashmi Joshi. Rashmi Joshi has done her master's degree in labor law and labor welfare and her post graduation in human resource management. Her first book was called Here and Beyond. Her second book was titled Men, Women, Mars and Venus and All That BS is gathering a lot of appreciation. This discussion will be led by Veena Rao. Veena Rao, who is an award winning journalist and author. Purple Lotus, her recently released debut novel, is a 2021 Georgia Author of the Year finalist, a 2021 American Fiction Award winner, and an award winning finalist in the Multicultural and Women's Fiction categories of the 2021 International Book Awards. She is the founder, publisher, and chief editor of NRI Pulse, an Atlanta based news publication. She has been recognized by the Limca Book of Records as the first Indian woman to edit and publish a newspaper outside India. I request Veena Rao to take this discussion forward.
Thank you very much. I'm very excited to be part of the 9th Pune International Literary Festival because Pune is my second hometown. My first hometown is Mangalore. I went to college there. I started my journalism career there. My son was born there. So it's a very, very special city. And so, very, very excited to be here and to lead the discussion. And today's panel discussion is on the topic, the dynamics of relationships in fiction and nonfiction. All relationships are complex, right? They're complex, they're ever evolving, and they play out in all relationships, be it marital relations or between family members or between friends or colleagues, and even those who pass through our lives for a season. Some of these dynamics are positive and healthy, and some are not so much. Some relationships are plain dysfunctional. And then, as one of our panelists will tell you, there are some relationships that are so toxic that they can lead to serious harm, even murder, right? Understanding the dynamics of our relationships puts us in the driver's seat. It empowers us to have more control over our lives. Today, we'll talk to our panel of 3 fabulous authors who have deeply explored relationship dynamics in their books. So without further ado, let's get our discussion started. And my first question to our panelists is, what motivated you to write your book and what did you hope to accomplish? Let's begin with you, Anirban. You have co-created and produced some of the most popular crime shows on television, Indian television, including the very popular Crime Patrol. So was your book the next logical step?
Absolutely. It was the next natural step towards fulfilling another step in my fascination for true crime, because I love the genre of true crime. I was living true crime 24/7, so it was natural that I start writing a book. And there was no book about Indian serial killers. We think that serial killers belong to the Western world and it's a Western world phenomena, but it's not. In India, there are over 30 serial killers, and they are worse. Some of them are worse than the Ted Bundys of the world and the Charles Mansons of the world. The youngest serial killer of India is 7 years old. Now, who can beat that? I mean, that's a world record. And the serial killer with the most number of kills is a person called Thug Behram from the 18th century, murdered over 930 people. That's a world record. So it really fascinated me, and that's why I wrote the book. What I wanted to achieve? Oh, fame, fortune, money. Then I realized writing doesn't pay.
That's hard.
Yeah. No, so for me, no, what I wanted to tell these stories for the viewers so that they get a new perspective into true crime.
And you have done a fabulous job of it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And moving on to Rashmi.
Yes, actually, Veena, what motivated me to write this book was my own life, my own transformation from a very typical female type personality to a very balanced persona. And it's not that I wanted to do it because of a certain thing in my mind, but life situations presented themselves in such a way in my life that I had no choice but to augment my yang quality, so to say. So I truly believe that it's your femininity or your masculinity is not innate necessarily. You can develop it through life situations, and that's exactly what happened. And then you go back and start asking questions because, hey, was this transformation bound to happen, or am I something different? So you start asking questions, you start interviewing people, you start asking friends, and you start researching, and then you realize that, hey, I'm not alone. there are so many people who think like me. So this is what motivated me, and what I want to accomplish. I really want to bring about a change in the way people think about men and women. And every single book that comes out in the market, it only creates a greater divide between men and women. So I want to bridge that gap. I want people to start thinking differently about relationships, the relationships about men and women and the dynamics of relationships. So that's it.
Right. So would you call your book a feminist book?
Not at all. Not at all. In fact, if women are sufferers, men are sufferers too. Of course, different ways in which men and women suffer. Even there is polarity, because simply because of the straight jacketed gender roles. So I have not just spoken about women's problems, but men problems too. And you'll be surprised there are many. So that's why it is a different book, because I have tried to look at it from different perspectives.
Amazing. That's wonderful. How about you, Bevinda?
In 1995, an editor asked me to take over the Agony Aunt page while the Agony Uncle was on leave. So I said, okay, fine. I said, it's fantastic. I'll have to write my own questions, because I thought all Agony Aunts write their own questions, uncles too. Turned out there were letters, and the letters used to be, 25 to 35 letters a week for this column. So I began reading them, and most of these had tear stains on them. And when you're holding a tear-stained letter and you are reading words of pain where they are pleading with you to help them, it does something, it changes something inside you. So I was getting letters from people as young as 11 years and as old as 83 and 84. So these people, the range was like the 11-year-old girl was kissed by her neighbor and then blackmailed into having sex with him at the age of 11 in his house every Thursday afternoon, when she didn't have tuitions. And the 83-year-old woman, her son was putting needles in her bed, and his wife was shifting the furniture around so she'd, injure herself. So we had letters from people ranging from children, adolescents, young adults, working men and women, parents, grandparents. And I didn't think of writing a book at that time, Then I met this hypnotherapist, Sharon Fernandez. She's a Pune resident. And she said, you should write a book, because I used to tell her about the solutions I offered for the problems. Many were out of the box solutions. And she said, you have to write a book. She nagged and nagged and nagged. So then I said, okay, I'll start writing. And the book wrote itself, practically, because I had that structure of the letters, ranging from ages. And they had peculiar problems typical of that age.
Right.
So I would write a chapter and send it to Sharon. She would approve of it. And when I was writing my 11th chapter, she died.
Oh.
She got this heart attack and she died, a stroke, and she died. And anyway, the book came out, and we finished it. There was a writer's block after she died, but then it happened and it came out.
And your book packs in a lot.
Pardon?
Right? Your book packs in a lot, from dating to first-time sex to abusive
Yes,
relationships.
so I've got this whole thing, it's a bell curve of a woman's life. Here I'm focusing on women. Those letters were written by men too.
Mm-hmm.
But there's this bell curve to a woman's life, and the top is the ages of 30 to 40. And all the decisions you take from childhood to, adolescence, young adult, all that matures into what you become at 30 and 40. So if you're going to be ground down by life, it's because of decisions you've taken in your youth. And if you're going to, step out and fly, that's because of those decisions, and you can enjoy the rest of your life. So that is what the book is about.
Wonderful.
And I'm hoping people read it, and I don't know whether I'm reinventing the wheel here, but I'm hoping I give them 4 wheels to drive,
And I'm sure it will do very well. Your book will do. Is it out already? Is it out in the market? It is
It's
out.
out.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the
Plus my
man-woman.
yes.
Let's talk a
Well,
little bit about the man-woman dynamics, that your book has explored.
See, it's not really man-woman dynamics. I mean, the book has mentioned man-woman, but
Yeah.
this friend of mine, Wendell Rodrigues, who was gay, he told me it applies to anyone. It applies to, even transgender relationships. It applies to homosexuals. It applies to lesbians. It applies to the whole gamut of people. So my thing was, the relationship begins with the individual. So the individual has to know who he or she is, where they are, where they have come from, and where they are going. Now, in terms of is this did you ask me about the conflict of
Yes, between the man-woman relationship.
now you will find some men, or rather a large number of men, who resent women just because they are women. And I've been wondering why that resentment turns into hatred, and that hatred, it has to be hatred. Only hatred would make a man smash his fist into a woman's face, or break her bones, or fling her across the room. So why do they have this hatred, So I thought it had to do with two things. One is a woman's mind, where she can say a definite yes or a definite no when she wants something or doesn't want something, and that drives some men berserk. And the other is the vagina. It takes in something as messy and pissy as semen and does some magic and creates life. So maybe it's a stretch, but I'm trying to think why this resentment, why this hatred. Now, meanwhile, when you come to a relationship, whether it's two men, two women, a man or a woman, brothers, sisters, there's always a power dynamic. There is one who puts in more effort into the relationship, while, trying to make it deeper, make it grow. The other is just along for the ride, and you notice this in almost every relationship I've seen, where one works harder and one does not.
Absolutely.
So
Yes.
that was my take on it.
Right. And ultimately, it all boils down to your relationship between yourself. I mean, within yourself, right?
With yourself.
Yeah, with
Yes.
yourself.
I think the hatred of the man towards the woman is also centuries and centuries of hard-coded misogyny and patriarchy. Um,
Hardwired
yeah,
patriarchy.
it's hardwired. That's in the subconscious. The man was always the provider, right? The hunter, the gatherer, while the
Gather.
woman was looked at as someone who stayed in the house, and so therefore immediately the power was with the man for the major decisions. Of course, times have changed. Women have evolved. Whether you see it in the Elizabethan period and all of that, and even now in modern times, the man and women are equal. But I think there is the hard-coded misogyny and patriarchy kicks in once in a while, and especially again, what kind of a childhood you've had, what kind of an upbringing you've had, what kind of a family structure, a societal environment you've had. I think that also influences your as a person's take on things.
Absolutely.
And
thought
there are and there are rural villages. We may think that, it's the rural areas that are patriarchal, and they're not. I mean,
no.
there are rural
Now,
villages
very
in the northeast,
right.
which are matriarchal.
Yes.
Men have no power. They get their ass booted over there. The property goes to the woman. So that's progressive. It's a very complicated environment that we are
Can you
literally
imagine
treading on.
it happening in North India, from the
Right.
northeast to North India? No.
Yes. How about you, Rashmi? What man-woman conflicts does your book explore?
Mm, Well, there's only conflict as far as relationships are concerned, purely because of the way we have been brought up and the conditioning of centuries. And we don't even know where this started actually, because I've gone down and traced the history, human history, for the last 166 million years, and the battle of the sexes, as they say. So there is evidence where during the Bronze Age, women were buried. They found different burial sites where they found that women traveled from their place to different areas to spread knowledge, culture, whatever little technology of that time. There were large number of women over a period of thousands of years. They traveled. So our estimate of women being at home or they being the ones who are natural nurturers falls flat. Actually, even later than that, women were also warriors. In fact, I went specially to Madrid to this human history museum, and over there also you see you actually skeletons over there where women have been buried with knives, spears, daggers, and men with mirrors, trinkets, and of course spears, daggers too. So there's so much that you don't know about the relationship as such, and we bring so much baggage along without really looking back about what it was earlier, what it is now, and do we still need to change, or are we just experiments on the trajectory of human development? So toxicity and this understanding about men and women is so flawed that people find it difficult to stay in relationships purely because they are so straight-jacketed, and our expectations from another sex, as far as certain roles are concerned, are so fixed that anything beyond that, gives you grief. It's as simple as that. So that is what my book addresses, and there's lots of things, of
And
course, that
yeah, and you
yeah.
do an excellent job of breaking the stereotypical beliefs about the man-woman relationship. So that's wonderful.
Thank you so
And
much.
Anirban, can you talk a little bit about the female serial killers in your book? I know on a previous call you told us that some of the most heinous crimes were committed by women in India. So what formed them? What made them serial killers? Audio.
No, can't hear you.
Okay, stupid me. That was I had muted my microphone. Sorry. So yeah, so the serial killers in the West are very different from those of India. In the West, it's a lot to do with the childhood. It's about sexual urges, all of that. In India, most of the serial killers are driven by greed, and less about lust and sex. Of course, that sort of becomes part of the equation, but primarily it's more to do with greed, lust, and all of that. And women are far more. I think was it Shakespeare who said women are more, or was it Kipling who said women are the most dangerous of the species, which sort of proves itself in India, because you've got a serial killer like Anjana Bai Gavit, who's from Pune, or who was from Pune, and she had two daughters, and she was a pickpocketer. I mean, she used to go into these busy temple areas and pickpocket, people. Um, so she was a hardened criminal. She taught her daughters, young daughters, to pickpocket as well. And on one occasion, one of the daughters was with her child, and she got caught. And out of an instinct, she said, "Oh, how can you suspect that I'm a thief? Look at me, I have a child with me, I'm a mother." And the crowd somehow believed her and let her go. She rushed back to her mother, saying, "I have an idea." And what they used to do was they used to wait in busy areas and kidnap infants, right? Like, usually in a crowd, what do we say? Hey, just stand here, I'll be right back, I'm going to go fill water, just I'll be back like 10 seconds, right? That's what we say, and we go, and that's the 5-10 seconds that they were waiting for. They would swoop down, kidnap the child, infant, and vanish. And then they would use that child as a decoy So if they ever got caught, they would smash the child down onto the pavement, breaking its skull, or injuring it, and then say, look what you've done. You're suspecting me. You pushed me, and this is what happened to my child. And then this would go on and on. They would use a child for 6 months, 5 months, kill it, move on. And these were mothers that we were talking about, right? We have the stereotypical image of the mother,
As a nurturer.
as a nurturing and the preserver. Yes,
Yes.
nothing of nurturing. You have another.
What made them that way? Is it
It's
genetic, just lack
it's-
of?
Nurture her daughters.
she definitely
I think ultimately
nurtured.
boils down to what conditioning.
Maybe they were a good
Right.
business plan. Who knows?
Yeah, so it was money. It was money, right? They were poor, so they had to. This was the scheme that they came up with. On the other hand, you've got another woman called Cyanide Malika. She used to. Oh, I mean, you must read the book because it's so fascinating. Her character. She is so smart. She is so smart. She figured out that where is a person most vulnerable. So she figured out it's in a temple, right? Because when do we go to a temple? We go to a temple either we are very happy, to thank the god, or we go there because we are sad and we are worried to ask for help, right? So in both conditions, we sort of let our guard down. She would then target women that looked vulnerable, looked weak, looked older, looked in trouble, and then she would go and say, what is your name? And the woman would say, oh, my name is Bevinda. Oh, where are you from? She would say, oh, I'm from Goa. He said, oh, really? Goa's a lovely place. What have you come to this temple for? And Bevinda would say, I've not had a child. My mother-in-law has been berating me. I've got married for 6 years. I'm unable to bear a child, and I've come to ask this God for a child. And this is how her head works, Malika's, right? She would say she knew exactly which temple specialized in which boon, right? As you know, in Hindu gods and God, you go to a certain temple for a child, you go you go to the Shani Devta to remove obstacles, or you go to Ganpati Bappa to remove obstacles, right? So she knew all the temples of the area, and she would say, oh, you want a child, why don't you go to this temple, because that god specializes in giving the children. And I know a special puja called the Mandala Puja. And I can do that for you. And Bevinda, who was at this point, emotionally drained, and finally sees a light of hope, right, out of the blue, saying, you can help me. And she says, yes, of course I can help you. And she said, okay, why don't you come to the temple on so and so date, wear all your finest jewelry, because it's a special puja, we would want to please the gods. And then Bevinda would turn up in the temple at a certain time. Malika would take her to a secluded corner and pretend to perform some puja, and then give her the holy water, the Channamrit, right, which has laced with cyanide. And within seconds, gone. And then she would strip all the jewelry and move on. And she would usually do this at places which were far away from the hometown of the victim. So then the body would rot away in a morgue somewhere, and because we didn't have a centralized police reporting system where everything's on a database, the body would remain unclaimed for months. And she would tell the victim not to talk about it with the family members as well. So the family members wouldn't know where their mother or their daughter was.
Yeah.
So this is
Fascinating.
I
Yeah.
am not stepping into any temple from now on. Where did they get the cyanide from? How did they manage to
Oh.
source?
So she was incarcerated on a minor charge, right? In the jail, she met this jeweler who was also in jail, right? And the jeweler was in jail because after cleaning, so it's used for cleaning gold, cyanide. So when the jeweler got rid of the cyanide water, some cow drank that water and died. So then the jeweler was sent to jail for accidental death and all of that. And that's when she came to know about the usage of cyanide. And then once she got out of jail, she went into a jeweler's shop and asked for whatever 10 grams of cyanide. And the guy asked, "Why? What do you need it for?" She said, "Clean my jewelry," and that was it. I mean, it's so easy to buy acid in India. That's the reality of the country, right?
Cyanide is a different.
You can just walk into a store. You can walk into a store, buy acid. Nobody asks you anything. It's the same like in firearms in the West. In America, I can just walk in and say, "Hey, listen, I want a Kalashnikov," and I'll get it.
Yes, that is
Okay, all right. So let's move on from serial killers to healthy relationships. Healthy relationships are essential for a healthy, happy life. In fact, research shows a correlation between healthy relationships and higher self-esteem and more empathy and lower rates of anxiety and depression. So, what essential elements of a healthy relationship does your book explore? Rashmi, would you like to go first?
Well, actually, at the end of the book, I have given it a spiritual twist, because at the end of it, I've said that, I've tried to advocate the importance of augmenting your yin and the yang. So if you're a man, then augment your Shakti. And if you're a woman, augment your Shiva. And when these two are in equal measure in your system, you don't have to work hard for your relationships, frankly. Like I said, everything is arising out of roles and the not meeting of those expectations arising of from those roles. So when you augment your forsaken side, you just become smarter. Your both the hemispheres of the brain start working in equanimity. Your analysis becomes clearer. Your decisions become smarter. So it's not just about trying to understand the opposite sex or trying to bridge the gap. Specially doing something, but if you augment your forsaken side, this happens naturally. You become a people magnet, actually, besides of course the relationships doing well just naturally. So that's what I have ultimately in the book tried to advocate.
So, can you talk a little bit about augmenting the forsaken side? How does one do that?
Well, let's talk about a simple thing, like let's say a man in a relationship. If there is a situation presented to him in life where his wife is away, or he's a single parent or something like that, then he is required to augment his yin side. And it is not just a possibility, but that is done so naturally because you are presented with a situation, you have no choice. You will be surprised to know that the body chemistry starts responding to the role that you're addressing at that given point in life. So, this is just a small example. There are so many situations where you actually can take on a role of a man if you're a woman, or if you're of a woman if you're a man, and unbelievably the body, the biology, the chemistry of the body, the biochemistry of the body supports that role. So this is what, this is what I've tried to, even the scientific perspective, I've given proper the whole research about how, like, if it's a man with a young baby, then you'll be surprised that's not just the mother, but oxytocin. It's called the feel-good hormone, or the hormone that needs to be present in your body to take care or to nurture, automatically starts developing in his body. So these are all experiments with empirical evidence to prove these things. So that's what I have tried to say in the book.
Very, very interesting. How about you, Bevinda?
I feel, I have written about these certain elements that make for a lasting relationship. Now, what we do is when we've got those stupid fairy tales and they lived happily ever after. And no one ever talks about, the bride PMSing. No one talks about the prince wanting to sleep on this side of the bed. No one talks about whether they divorced. There's no divorce in fairy tales. And who got custody of the kids, who stayed in the castle, all that's all glossed over. But then you have the romances, and so people go into a relationship expecting all this, but that doesn't work. What works is when both parties, both partners, have a mutual respect. I call it the rack syndrome. They have a mutual respect for each other. It doesn't matter what power play is going on all around them. Between them there is respect. They have affection for each other. There's a friendship. They have complete comfort in each other's company. That's very difficult, to have when there's an imbalance in the relationship. So when they have complete comfort in each other's company, and when kindness plays a large role. So I'll tell you about this friend of mine. I had, is there time? Can I speak for 2 minutes?
Yeah, for 2 minutes, yes.
Okay. So there's this friend of mine I had lunch with, and he and his daughter ordered this prawn pulao. I had my fish thali rice in Goa, and the wife was a vegetarian, strict vegetarian. So she had a veg thali, and the prawn pulao was a huge amount, enough for 4 people. So these two were struggling with it. Finally, I told the daughter, you can pack it up and take it back to the hotel. So the father, who was my friend, he said, no. He said, I will eat up all the prawns and I don't want to take plain pulao back to the hotel. So he left the dish like that, and we were talking, he and I noticed his wife, the vegetarian, picking out prawns, digging into the dish and taking out prawns and putting it into his plate. And he looked at her and he looked at me, and his face was beautiful to behold, He had this look of pride, of, joy in his face. And I found that, these little things, these little kindnesses, they're the hallmark of a strong relationship. And they're not a newly married couple. Huh? They had a 25-year-old daughter. So this is what
So kindness and friendship.
Yeah, but even there's love and there's passion and there's hot sex and there's all this stuff also. But that has an expiry date,
Yes.
And that's like this beautiful tool leather luggage you're carrying around, But what goes inside is this, the rack. Without it, you're going to feel like a fool with an empty suitcase, and those things burn out. This is lasting. I don't have it, but other people have it.
All right. Anirban, your book is about serial killers, and serial killers and healthy relationships don't go together. But you also have a book of poetry coming out soon.
Oh,
Yes, and I'm sure it talks
Yes.
about life and relationships. Would you like to?
Oh yes, lots of emotional angst. The poems have a lot of emotional angst about relationships. It's rather dark. Even the poetry is about death, the fear of death, the futility of life, and all of that. So I think relationships. I think someone said, "Don't write a love poem when you're in love. Write it when you're not." Right? Because that's when the angst will come out. So a lot of the poems on relationships are about a broken heart. Which I wrote when I had a broken heart. Now I find it a little difficult to write poetry because life is good. I'm happily married, and I have a son, and sort of life is settled down, as we say in India. No, we have to settle down. We always our journey is towards settling down, as if like we are stuck in a storm, going round and round or whatever in a cyclone. We must settle down.
You have cheated us of good poetry.
You'll enjoy these as well. Except that these were written a little while ago, but 44 poems.
Okay. So coming back to your book, how does your book explore the red flags in a toxic relationship? Who is
This is
how to? This is for you about
Nice.
coming back to your book about the serial killers.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah.
Like for an instance, there was a killer called Raman Raghav, right,
Yeah.
in the 60s, 70s in Bombay. Then he had a dislike for women. Um, he hated women. Um, and when he was caught, and they investigated as to why, two instances immediately came to the forefront. One was he was supposed to get married, right? And he did some crime, and then he was sent off to jail for a couple of months. When he came out, that woman had already gotten married to somebody else. So he was jilted, right? So that really peeved him off. And then his parents and all of that said, "Oh, no, no, don't worry, we'll get you married and everything." And they got another woman. They fixed a marriage with another woman, and Raman Raghav came to know that this woman had been rejected by someone else for marriage. So he was like, "Oh, this is rejected. The woman being a commodity, he wasn't happy with a rejected piece, so to speak, right? And so he immediately refused to marry her as well. And these two instances made him mistrust women. So he grew up hating women, mistrusting women, but also it became a power play and dynamic. Like when he killed a woman in Malad, she was a poor woman in a shanty. Um, because she was poor, she wasn't wearing any lingerie or blouse. And after he had clobbered her head open, her breasts were exposed, and he got aroused, and he made love to the corpse. Um, and so that's how he was, because he had lost a sense of right, wrong. He was, as Sanjay Dutt and Arshad Varsi said, chemical locha in the head. So he had fully chemical locha in the head. So these were the red flags, or if you take a case like Cyanide Mohan, who was a school teacher and who used to seduce women, kill them, and his wife had no clue that this was the alter ego of Cyanide Professor Mohan Kumar, and that he was continuing this over a period of 3-4 years. So in the case of red flags, it's most of the times we ignore it. I mean, even if you see the Western serial killers, we ignore it.
Yeah. Do you see the signs, when they're children? Is it something that's in the DNA of the serial killer?
Things happen.
genetic?
Things happen to us. So in Landmark Forum, they say that things happen when you're 3, when you're 7, and when you're 11, and these things subconsciously affect you later on. Right? So, disturbed childhood, abusive parents, poverty, all of that. Malika wanted a better life because she was brought up in poverty. So she always aspired for riches. She wanted a comfortable life. And that's what, made her start killing for the jewelry and all of that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but I find it a little, I mean, personally, I find it, so when we say, when a criminal in court pleads insanity, and it happens a lot in the West, these serial killers, say plea of insanity, you always have a choice, and it's almost like abusing the law when you opt for this, except for probably Raman Raghav and Amardeep Sada, who was the 7-year-old killer. The others knew exactly what they were doing. So there is no, saying, falling back on saying, oh, he didn't, or they didn't understand, what it is.
Right. How about you, Bevinda? Does your book explore
Yes,
toxic
it does.
relationships?
I have a chapter, I have a part of the book which is protecting yourself from pain at any age. Okay? Pain in relationships. So there are two kinds of relationships, toxic relationships. One is results in mental abuse, and one results in domestic violence. Now, I could read the points out. Should I read the points
Sure.
out?
Yes, please go ahead.
Go much faster than me
Sure.
yammering on. Okay, so continuous criticism is the first sign for the mental abuse situation. Continuous criticism is the first sign. Gaslighting in every conversation, where you make up stories, the person lies. Let's just call the person the bully. The bully lies all the time. Okay, and he'll twist the truth. Then the bully is always negative, and it's difficult to have conversation with that person, and that person is always full of self-praise. Okay, that's a very important sign. Then the bully has double standards. Okay, one rule for her or for him, because now a psychiatrist told me that there are so many women who are now like this, where they reduce their husbands to wrecks because of this kind of personality disorder, it's called. Then you always feel the need to apologize to this person, and you don't know why. And that person will have no sense of humor at all, and he or she is always spoiling for a fight. And the fault is never theirs. The blame is always yours. You are to blame. They never come forward with a genuine apology, and they are vicious towards your friends and your family. But they're perfectly normal with, in fact, they're very charming with strangers and trans acquaintances. And they only get worse with age. There is no hope. Okay. Now, with domestic violence, I spoke to this licensed clinical social worker, and he's a therapist too, and he handles men who are violent wife batterers. Okay, so he said there's a common pattern of behavior. Now, this is for domestic violence. The mental abuse guy may ruin your life, or woman may ruin your life without raising a finger on you, without touching you. But with the domestic violence, he says there's a common pattern of behavior followed by abusers, which is meant to control the woman in order to change her sense of self, her identity, her behavior, which the male batterer cannot tolerate. This is what Bernardo Villafania has said. Okay? Then he says the domestic violence begins with the words, shut up. Then it escalates, he says, to 5 forms of abuse: emotional abuse, psychological abuse, sexual abuse, economic abuse, and of course, physical abuse. Now, here are the early signs. I won't read the early signs. I'll read the part which says when you are in danger of being killed, okay, by a violent partner. So the physical violence increases in severity and frequency. Second, you stifle thoughts that your partner is capable of killing you. Third, your partner has attempted to choke you, essentially broadcasting his ability to kill. He owns a weapon. He has given you injuries in the past that could have resulted in your death. He was violent towards you when you were pregnant. He controls all your activities. He threatens you with a weapon. He forces you to have sex. He uses street drugs or is a problem drinker. He has threatened to kill you and then kill himself. He becomes unemployed and feels worthless and angry. He experiences any traumatic event or receives proof that the relationship is over, and then you're in danger. He is violent towards the children. He is violent outside the house and destroys things that are important to you. He stalks you when you leave him and has others reporting to him on your activities. So these are the points which can save your life if you observe. But many people just tamp it down and wait it out.
On the flip side, of course, there are because I've been doing a crime show for the last 11 years now. I have noticed women abusing the Domestic Violence Act 2005 and the 498A.
That's it.
They pretend to be battered and put false claim, and the law is so lopsided. I mean, a woman walks into a police station and says, "My husband has, hit me." Immediately, the husband is picked up without, any kind of an investigation, prima facie, based on her statement.
But I
And
would
I've
say,
I've had and I've had friends who have suffered through this because the woman wanted the property.
Okay.
okay.
We have just 5 minutes left, so let's quickly move on. Would you like to chime in, Rashmi?
Rashmi has to chime in.
Yeah, about the red flags,
Yes.
I feel, these are the basics that every human being should be given or is entitled to, frankly, is freedom. Freedom is a right. It's not that you give it to somebody. Then red flag is when people, uh, put you in a bracket of, let's say, a low intellect, or strip you of your self-esteem, or strip you of your individuality. And the worst are soul suckers, actually. And you don't even know, they go to the deepest part of your existence, and they can just pull you down from there. So there's lots and lots of red flags in relationships, but there's always a way of coming back. And that is what I have addressed in the book. How to get back, your confidence, how to become that person who nobody can take advantage of. So
Okay. So yeah, very quickly, since we just have a few minutes left, what are the top takeaways of your book? Very quickly. You have a minute each.
well, for me, top takeaway from my book is, I think I already mentioned, augment your Shakti if you're a man, and your Shiva if you're a woman. And when you have these two in equanimity in your system, it just makes you a smarter person. The mountain, the peaks and the slopes make a mountain. Inhalation and exhalation make breath. Day and night make the day, like the sun and the moon make the day. So it's important that you augment that side of you that is forsaken. That's the top
How
takeaway
about
from
you,
my book.
Bevinda? Thank you.
My top takeaways would be: keep your bullshit radar shining and in good working condition. And if you happen to fall, because we all make wrong choices, don't just lie there in the dust. Get up, dust yourself off, and power on. That's what
That's wonderful.
my book says.
Well said. Well said. How about you, Anirban?
So the major takeaway of my book is I was living in the heads of these serial killers, the 12 of them, while I was writing it. So uh, my book will tell you about the red flags, will tell you how people fall into crime, will tell you how to spot people, of suspicious behavior. But most important takeaway, I think, for all three of our books is that the viewer takes them away and reads them. And takes them
Absolutely.
away from bookstores and all of that, and buys the book, and to support small authors like us. And I take the liberty of deliberately saying we are small authors. We don't sell lakhs of copies of books. We wish we did, but please, because all three of us have written these books with a lot of love, a lot of passion, a lot of hard work. So these are genuine efforts. So please take away the books and read them.
Yes. And I hope your
Thanks,
books will
Anirban.
be the bestsellers. Thank you. Do we have more time? I think we do, right? We have about
So
5
this is the
minutes.
book.
So
So everybody can quickly
Could
hold
we
up their
take
book.
some
hold up your
questions?
books. And also, if
Could
you'd
we
like to
take up
tell
some
us,
questions? I'd like to tell you about this one person. I'm holding up my book. This was the girl who forced me to write the book. Today is her 4th death anniversary. I'm certain she's had something to do with the date of
definitely,
this
definitely.
thing.
Yes.
Her 4th death anniversary, 22nd December. Amazing.
Amazing, amazing.
Yeah.
Yes, I think that's all the time we
No
have left.
questions. We
Um,
can't take questions from the
I think
audience.
I
there
I
are
think
don't
we
know.
some
I think
questions in
we've
the chat
yapped too
box.
much. I think we've yapped for too much.
right.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's
So
all
a big
Veena's
thank
fault.
you. Thank you
Thank
to our
you, Veena.
panelists. Thank you. Thank you to our
Thank
esteemed panelists for a wonderful discussion. And thank you, Pune International Literary Festival, for this opportunity.
for inviting
Good
us.
night.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, Manjari. Thank you, Manjari. Thank you, Pune Lit Fest. See you next
Thanks,
year.
Manjari. Thanks, Veena.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Thanks,
Anirban,
Manjari.
Bevinda. See you all soon.
See you.
Bye bye.
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 Thank you so much for sharing your
How do we
vibrant
get out
thoughts
of
with
it
us.
now?
It was indeed an inspiring experience. We thank Anirban Bhattacharya, Bevinda Collaço, Rashmi Joshi, and Veena Rao for being our guests at PLF. This concludes our final discussion of Day 2 at Studio 2. It has been a great day with so many amazing discussions. We hope you all enjoyed it. On this note, we end Day 2 of PLF 2021. We hope you had a smashing time and join us tomorrow for we have a whole new set of interesting discussions lined up. Thank you and good night. Shubhratri. We thank our title partner Vishwakarma Publication and our bookstore partner Crossword.